Good day, everyone. For the Module 5, we will be discussing audit documentation. So, before I begin, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Tabora, and I'll be discussing the overview and also the importance of audit documentation. Since a lot of you here already know what audit documentation is, let's have some quick overview of the audit documentation. So audit documentation, also known as working papers, work papers, or the audit file, it refers to the record of the audit procedures performed, the relevant audit evidence obtained, and the conclusions reached by the auditor during the audit. So a little bit of uh, relapse or a little bit of facts, okay? So these audit documentation, the work papers or the working papers of the auditor is of course owned by the auditor. Always remember that. Okay. In simple terms, audit documentations serve as like what a written evidence of what or the auditor's work. So it shows what procedures were performed, what evidence was gathered, and how the auditor arrived at a conclusion regarding the financial statements. So audit documentation is important because it supports the auditor's opinion. It demonstrates the compliance with a specific auditing standard, or it provides a basis for review by supervisors, the regulators, or the auditors himself. So let's discuss now the key information to be included in the audit documentation. So first is the evidence of basis for conclusion. So I guess it's really no-brainer talaga. So first is the evidence of the basis for conclusion. So when we say basis, so audit documentation must clearly show the evidence that supports the auditor's conclusion and professional judgments. This means that the auditor must document how they evaluated the information obtained for why they reach a particular conclusion. So why is it mo nga ni opinion? Of course, we need to know the basis for that conclusion, that is uh, and that is included in our audit documentation. Next is we have compliance with standards. So, audit documentation must demonstrate that the audit was performed in accordance with applicable auditing standards, such as those international standards in auditing, or in the Philippines, we had the Philippine standards in auditing. So, by properly documenting those procedures and findings, so auditors can prove they followed the required professional guidelines. Because this is important during quality inspections, the peer reviews, or maybe regulatory examinations. So, in other words, documentations acts as, of course, the evidence, of course, but in which the auditor has complied with the standards, with the professional standards and the ethical responsibilities that is expected of him. Next, we also have the audit planning and performance. So, audit documentation should include those that were planned for the audit and how those procedures were carried out. So, this includes those audit strategy that you need to create, the audit programs, the risk assessments, the procedures that are designed to address the risks. So, proper documentation really ensures that the audit was systematically planned and properly executed, helping auditors maintain organization and efficiency during the audit process. Of course, again, always note this audit planning, the purpose of audit planning, creating an overall audit strategy, audit plan, and others is for the effectiveness and efficiency of the audit thing, of course. Next, we have supervision and review. So, audit documentation, of course, it must show that the work performed by the audit staff has been properly supervised and reviewed, of course, by the senior auditors or audit managers. Dili na siya supervisors of the what do you call this? The supervisors of the business or the or your client. It's supposed to be from the audit firm itself. Of course, there must be supervision and review for quality control. So we also have accountability. Of course, I think you're familiar with this word. So audit documentation provides a clear record of who performed audit procedures and who reviewed them. So it means that the working papers that included the name, the initials of the person, the CPAs, of course, the person who prepared the documents, the date it was prepared, and the reviewer's approval. So it actually promotes responsibility and transparency within the audit team, ensuring that each member is accountable for their work. Next is record of significant matters. So significant keyword. So significant matters. So of course during the audit, so auditors may encounter a lot of issues, unusual transactions, or areas that require significant professional judgment. Again, significant professional judgment. You really need to apply those things. So these matters must be carefully documented. So it it includes those issues that were identified, the discussions that were held with management. Of course, you really need to add those things, and how the auditor tried to resolve the matter. So documenting significant matters ensure that the future reviewers can understand the reasoning behind critical decisions made during the audit. So also a fact, one of those future reviewers as well will be the next auditor. In the cases of pre-engagement, in cases na uh, the next auditor will be inquiring you of in order for him to understand the industry of the business itself. Okay. And lastly, of course, we have the quality control. So what is quality control? So here, of course, working papers allow these audit firms to monitor the quality of their audit work. I think if you have noticed the previous key importance, no, the previous importance of the audit documentation, uh, you can really connect it to quality control. So it actually provides that the evidence that appropriate procedures were performed and the audit met professional standards. So documentation is also used during internal quality reviews, external inspections, and regulatory evaluations. Though proper documentation, so audit firms can maintain high quality audits and continuously improve the audit processes. So again, that will be all for audit documentation overview and of course the importance as well.
Let's continue with our discussion with regards to audit documentation. Now we discussed the overview and its importance. Now let's move on to its key information to include in the audit documentation. As discussed by Mr. Tabora, we know that audit documentation is very important as it provides a record of the procedures performed, the evidence obtained, and the conclusions reached by the auditor. This helps ensure that transparency, accountability, and compliance with auditing standards is met. First, what we need to put in our audit documentation is the nature of the information or the data being prepared or documented. So this refers to the type of information that is included in the audit working papers. This may include financial records, transaction details, internal control documentation, or any supporting data relevant to the audit. The purpose of documenting this information is to clearly show what the auditor or what data the auditor reviewed and analyzed during the audit process. Next would be the timing of the work performed, including the audit period and the date of preparation. So this information indicates when the audit procedures were carried out or performed, and it also shows the specific period being audited, such as a fiscal year or the accounting period. This recording of the timing is important as it ensures that the audit work was conducted within the appropriate time frame and according to auditing standards, so that the information being audited or in the audit documentation is relevant and reliable, and it is timely related. Next would be the name of the auditor who prepared the audit working papers. Why is the name of the auditor important? As this is the name of the auditor who worked on the audit or the working papers establishes accountability and responsibility, as it is easy to identify who performed the work and allows supervisors or reviewers to trace and review the documentation if needed. And also for those who are working also with the working papers, they wouldn't have a hard time knowing or understanding it, as they could just ask the person working with the audit working papers. This is essential for maintaining professional responsibility and responsibility within the audit team. Next in our list is the extent of audit procedures performed to comply with international standards on auditing or ISAs and the legal requirements. This means documenting how much audit work was performed and what procedures were conducted, such as inspection, observation, confirmation, or analytical procedures. This would ensure that the audit meets professional standards and regulatory requirements. Next would be the evidence obtained, procedures used for testing, and the results of those tests. So, auditors must document the evidence they gathered and how they tested information. For example, they may verify the financial records, they confirm balances, or review the supporting documents. Recording this will help demonstrate that the auditor's conclusions are based on reliable and sufficient evidence. Next will be significant matters identified during the audit related to financial statements, ethics, or processes. So these include important findings, unusual transactions, potential errors, or risks that could affect the financial statements. Documenting these matters would help auditors communicate important issues and determine whether further investigation is needed. Next would be the professional judgment made by the auditor, especially in testing or sampling. So, auditing often requires critical thinking and decision making, especially when evaluating complex financial information. So, by documenting these professional judgments, the auditors can explain the reasoning behind their decisions and conclusions. This would mean that the auditor had gathered enough relevant and reliable evidence to form a reasonable opinion about the financial statements. Proper documentation of this would ensure that the audit opinion is well supported and defensible. To conclude, audit documentation plays a crucial role in the auditing processes, as we know that it records the nature of the work performed, the evidence obtained and the judgments made, and the conclusions reached by the auditor. By including these key pieces of information, auditors can ensure that their work is transparent, well supported, and compliant with the auditing standards.